What's going on, everybody? My name is Kevin Sixen Carlino. Today's September 19th, 2012, and this is going to be the first episode of my Blizzard All-Stars Informational Series. Now, I'm making this series to help better educate you guys on what Blizzard All-Stars is, and hopefully lead us up into the beta. So that way, come beta, you're all going to understand, okay, this is how you play the game, this is what the game's all about, these are the mechanics, etc. So today's episode is going to be all about generally what this game means, what it stands for, some of the core gameplay mechanics, why it's going to differ from other MOBAs on the market, in addition to why I believe this game is going to succeed. So first things first, what is this game? So this is Blizzard All-Stars. It was formerly known as Blizzard Dota, and it's simply an action real-time strategy game or a multiplayer online battle arena where you're able to play as any of the heroes from any of Blizzard's franchises and simply duke it out with other ones. Seems pretty cool. To help better illustrate this point, I think we should take a look at the trailer.
In a tiny, trans-dimensional pocket universe sit two dark and terrible gods, one red, one blue. To amuse themselves, they kidnap great heroes from across time and space. And those heroes come from one company, Blizzard. These heroes are forced to fight to the death in an endless battle with no purpose other than ladder points. This is Blizzard Dota.
Alrighty, so two things before moving on. Like I said earlier, the game is no longer called Blizzard Dota, it's now called Blizzard All-Stars. Second thing is that a lot of the heroes you noticed, Nova, Tassadar, Mirrodin, the Witch Doctor, these are all heroes from StarCraft, Warcraft, and Diablo. Now keep in mind, this game is not just going to include those heroes from those franchises. Blizzard's also thinking about the rest of their franchises. So Eric, Balog, and Olaf from Lost Vikings, or Kyle Blackthorn from Blackthorn, any of the heroes from Rock and Roll Racing. These are all fair game. It's not just going to be from their three major franchises. Now let's go ahead and talk about core gameplay mechanics. So why don't we check out the generic Dota or other MOBA mechanics first. There's 6 of them. Right? So there's teamwork, it's laning, it's pushing, it's ganking, and then of course stats and itemization. So how does this work? Better yet, why don't we take a look and think back? Why don't we just degrade this down to a very basic standpoint? What makes a Dota game other than those 6 mechanics? Well, you have a hero, so you as a player control one hero. You have a team of other players controlling their heroes. Your goal is to destroy the enemy base. And to do so, you have to destroy the enemy army as well as the enemy heroes. In order to do that, you have to itemize your character, get better stats, simply by leveling up. Okay. So Blizzard took a look at these mechanics and these gameplay values and said, okay, how can we make our own game? How can we make it better? What can we do to improve it? How can we make this our own? So they thought a bunch, and they came up with 6 gameplay ideals that they're following for Blizzard All-Stars. I'm going to talk about them in groups of 2. So the first 2 are fixing the fantasy, as well as increasing game activity by removing passive elements. Now, what does that mean? So first things first, fixing the game fantasy. You're this epic hero from one of the Blizzard franchises, right? You want to lead the charge into battle, you want to fight the army of the opposing team. Well, no, not in other Dota games. You have to sit back at a tower, watch the battle from afar, and make sure you get that killing blow. Doesn't seem very heroic, right? So this is where Blizzard All-Stars is going to change things up. So there's not going to be any more last-hitting creeps or denying creeps. Instead of this, they've implemented a health globe system similar to Diablo 3. Okay. They're also encouraging team-based aggression earlier on in the game. They're also implementing a mount system to replace the whole boots system, I guess you can call it. It's really just the item, the boots items, although there are various of them. So they're implementing a mount system in place of this. Okay? So those are 3 systems that are getting changes. So tower mechanics are changing, they implemented a mount system, and they also implemented this health globe system, right? They got rid of last hits and creep denies. So that's how they're fixing the fantasy, that's how they're increasing game activity by, removing those passive elements like hanging back at the tower, not being aggressive, etc. So these next 2 ideals are easy to learn, difficult to master, which Blizzard follows with all of their games, in addition to the epic hero roles that they've created. So easy to learn, difficult to master, right? You're going to be able to jump into the game, understand how it works, because they've simplified items, they simplified the stat system. So you're going to be able to jump in, understand how it works, and just play. You might not win that first game, but you're going to understand everything. Of course, at the same time, while you might understand it, there's also going to be those complex strategy that's behind core gameplay just to make things difficult to master, right? So you can think of this game as a Diablo plus StarCraft combination, right? So it's Diablo 3, what PvP would be. You control one hero character, you fight other heroes, but there's also core strategy things like, from StarCraft, map control, vision, having information about your enemies, things of that nature. This is why I really believe this game is Diablo plus StarCraft, in essence. Okay? So the second thing is epic hero roles. Now, they've designated 4 different hero roles, so currently, I believe there's 12. They might launch the game with 16. And there's 4 different roles. It's DPS, it's support, it's tank, and it's siege. Now I'm going to go further into each of these, in fact, each of these mechanics, not just these heroes, in further videos throughout the series. I've got one video planned for each of the mechanics. So that covers the next 2 ideals. These last 2 ideals are to create a more exciting metagame in addition to reducing social tension. So how do they create a more exciting metagame? That's interesting. They've completely changed how the jungle system is going to work. So they've adjusted jungling mechanics. They've also adjusted the fact that there's not just going to be one map. They're going to have a variety of maps, right? How cool would it to be to play in Sanctuary? How cool would it to be to play in Molten Core? Interesting, right? Maybe they don't have 3 lanes for each map. Maybe there's just a map with 5 lanes, and you start somewhere else in the game. You don't start in your base. Maybe there's only 1 lane, right? Like ARAM for League of Legends. Pretty interesting. In addition to removing social tension, the games, on average, are only 20 minutes long. Sure, you have those outliers that are 5 minutes and those other ones that are 40 minutes, but on average, games are 20 minutes long. So what does this mean? It means that you're no longer taking up an hour of your time, so your entire lunch break, to play through a game of Blizzard All-Stars. Now you can get in 2, 3, maybe even 4 games, depending on the length. Okay? They've also taken away the idea of kills, deaths, and assists, and turned it into simply takedowns. Now this takedown system allows you to play more as a team. So you're going to play as a support character. You're going to play as a tank character. Just because you don't get the last hit doesn't mean you don't get any gold. If you participate in taking down an enemy character, you receive a takedown point for it, and these takedowns simply grant you gold, and the gold is split between all of the heroes that took part in taking down that hero. Seems pretty interesting. So what does this do again? It goes back to our first ideal. It makes things, it increases or encourages early team-based aggression. This game is all about working as a team, right? Okay, so the second thing they're doing is they're getting rid of the kill, deaths, assessed scoreboard. Instead of showing the KDA scoreboard, what they're going to show is total gold per team. So what does this mean? It's going to allow you as the player to easily see where your team lines up and as far as gold goes, right? So you're going to see, okay, my team, we might have 10 kills, but they might have, 3,000 more gold than you do. Why is that? Simply because, yes, you guys are getting kills, but they're pushing harder than you are. So instead of seeing, oh, KDA, you're going to see, oh, crap, they've got more gold as a team than we do. That's very important. If you think about a game like Dota 2, just yesterday I was playing a game, and while my team had 25 more kills than the other team, they pushed a lot harder than we did, and we ended up losing. So this is why these things are going to be a lot more better at helping you as a player play this game. Again, Blizzard's goal with Blizzard All-Stars is to shrink the learning curve here. Easy to learn, difficult to master. So let's see, back to creating more exciting metagame and reducing social tension. You got to think about levers. There's really not going to be many levers in this game simply because it's going to be shorter. It's only 20 minutes long. So like I said earlier, you're going to be okay with putting out the 20 minutes or 30 minutes for this game as opposed to 40 minutes, 50, 60, 70 minutes for a Dota 2 game or something along those lines. Now, I think that's going to wrap up all 6 gameplay ideals. Now, like I said, I'm going to get more into specifically each of the mechanics that are changing due to these ideals in further episodes down the line. Now, I want to touch on why this is going to differ from other MOBAs. I believe that this is directly going to compete with League of Legends, simply because, again, the learning curve is much smaller than, say, Dota 2. In addition, you're not going to be punished for dying as much. This game isn't about solo play, it's all about team-based play. So I believe it's going to simply compete with League of Legends more because of that. Not that Dota 2 or Heroes of Newerth don't require team-based play, but I think that League of Legends has the smallest learning curve. Why I believe this is going to succeed, again, goes back to Blizzard's ideals, simply because this game is going to be different than anything else that we know, right? While it may compete with League of Legends, my assumption I don't necessarily know. While it may compete with League of Legends, it is going to be different than League of Legends for those different reasons that I've listed. Tower mechanics, jungling mechanics, mount system, simplified items and stats. These are all things that make this game different, make it unique. Okay? So I think that's going to wrap up today's episode. This next episode, I'm going to be showcasing all of the heroes. I'm also going to be talking about what went into designing those characters. Now, if you guys are interested in the series, follow me on Twitter @Sixen for further updates. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy.